Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In today's video, I am going to be discussing last night's game between the Utah Jazz and the Milwaukee Bucks. The Jazz ended up winning this one with a final score of 129 to 115, and it really never felt like it was too close. The Jazz ended up opening up a pretty huge lead in the first half, and they never really looked back. I don't think the Bucks were ever able to cut it down to single digits in the second half, and the Jazz genuinely looked really good out there tonight. For the Bucks, you could make the excuse that Jrue Holiday didn't play, but the Jazz literally have the exact same excuse, as their starting point guard in Mike Conley also sat out tonight's game with an injury. So really, the Bucks just lost to the team that has been the best in the NBA so far, and in my opinion is the best in the NBA right now. I don't necessarily think that makes them the title favorite, but as of right now, it's indisputable that the Jazz are playing the best basketball out of any squad in the league. There's plenty of time for other teams to catch up, like the Bucks and the Lakers and the Clippers, to name a few. But as of now, the Jazz are the best team in the league, and they absolutely showed why in today's game. They have an established formula of how they are able to win games. They're going to use Rudy Gobert to lock down the paint on the defensive end, and on offense, they're going to get enough scoring from their excellent group of perimeter players to outscore the opposing offense. And that offense was absolutely lethal today, but Gobert really led the charge for the Jazz on both ends. His rim running extraordinaire on the offensive end is so valuable to Utah, and I think that it really gets left out when people discuss Rudy's game. People usually just think of him as a defensive guy first and foremost, and an offensive player really as just an added plus, but he's genuinely one of the best rim runners in the league. In today's game, he threw down multiple dunks off of lobs, was able to get to the free throw line on multiple occasions, shot 13 free throws in today's game, and was genuinely knocking them down at a pretty high rate as he went 9 for 13 from the line. And of course, Rudy's going to be great defensively, finished with 12 rebounds and 4 blocks. So overall, he is the most important player for this Jazz team. That's indisputable. And he had a terrific game on both ends of the court to really carry them to this win. But his partner in crime had a little bit of a struggling game. Donovan Mitchell had 26 points and 8 assists and made some really nice passes, but really struggled to shoot the ball efficiently from the field, making just 6 of his 20 shots and 1 of his 9 3-pointers. However, he was able to scavenge the day a little bit and still get up to that 26-point mark by getting to the free throw line 14 times, and he made 13 of those free throws. With Donovan, when the shots aren't falling, it's definitely promising to see him continue to be effective in the offense by creating looks for his teammates and getting to the line. So despite this not being an efficient scoring night for him, it was still a good game because of the things he did outside of making his three-point shots. Speaking of three-point shots, though, the Jazz got plenty of those out of 2 of their role players who really stepped up in this game, and that was Jordan Clarkson and Joe Ingles. Ingles had 27 points on 8 for 11 shooting and made 7 of his 9 3-pointers. He has had a ridiculously hot start to this season, as have many of the Jazz shooters, and this was the second consecutive game in which I saw this squad in action, in that he was incredibly effective from beyond the arc, and this was certainly an impressive showing from Joe Ingles. When he's able to hit shots off of catch and shoot opportunities like he did tonight, it just makes them that much more dangerous, as he's probably one of the worst shooters in this Jazz perimeter rotation, and he's still a 40+% shooter from beyond the arc. It's just ridiculous how much shooting is on this Jazz team, and that carries over to the other role player who had a big night today in Jordan Clarkson, who is probably the front runner for 6th man of the year so far this season. Clarkson had 25 points on 10 for 18 shooting and made 4 of his 11 threes. He just has such a demoralizing characteristic to him if you're a fan of an opposing team, because he just hits every single difficult shot that he takes. whether it's a contested three off the dribble or some crazy finish at the rim where he just kind of wraps it around a shot blocker and flips it up and somehow gets it to go in. Clarkson is an incredibly effective offensive player, and this has probably been his best season to date. So this was just a really great team victory for the Jazz. I just talked about 4 players in depth, and all 4 of those guys had 25 plus points to lead them to this win. I was also intrigued by the fact that they went to a 2-big lineup with Gobert being out there at the same time as Derek Favors. That's been something they've been pretty hesitant to do, but it worked pretty well against the Bucks, considering the fact that the Bucks have 2 big men pretty much out there at all times, with Giannis Antetokounmpo playing alongside either Bobby Portis or Brook Lopez. Giannis really struggled in this game, and I think that a big part of that could be the fact that Derek Favors was guarding him, and he gave Giannis a lot of trouble. Now, Antetokounmpo ended up finishing with a pretty remarkable stat line. He had 29 points and 15 rebounds on 12 for 20 shooting, but I think he had 6 points at halftime. So a lot of this came in garbage time, and it was some empty production that was really too little too late. However, I do think there are some positives that can be taken away from this Giannis performance. One of those, and probably the chief among those, being his production out of the post. Once the Bucks realized that he wasn't going to be super effective as an on-ball attacker, they started to try to get him the ball in isolation post-up opportunities against Royce O'Neal. And Giannis genuinely looked really good out of those post-ups, as he was able to use spin moves and drop steps to his advantage, and ended up getting quite a few dunks out of the post. So that's a good sign for him, because it's really a way for the Bucks to get around the wall that opposing teams tend to try to build in order to defend Giannis. So it's a good sign to see him doing that. And speaking of good signs, this was also Brook Lopez's best game of the season, at least scoring the ball. Brook had 23 points on 8 for 18 shooting. I think that his offensive game has been a bit forgotten over the past couple of years. People think of him now more as a 3-and-D big man who is going to protect the rim on defense and hit shots on offense. And he did knock down 3 of his 9 3-point attempts in this game. But he is still capable of attacking opposing defenders off of the bounce, and he can really take advantage of mismatches, as when smaller guys are matched up against him in the half court, he can really pound it in there and get himself really solid looks at the basket. He sometimes takes on that Brooklyn Brook form, where he's getting to his hook shot or taking a fadeaway jumper in the post. And while it's not the best shot for the Bucks, it's good that they have that extra wrinkle to their offense. And today they really needed that from Brook. As Giannis was struggling, Chris Middleton had just 18 points, which obviously isn't his best game, although it's certainly not terrible. So Brook really stepped it up in the first half and carried a lot of the scoring load, which is not really something that we've seen from him too much so far this season. My last takeaway from this game for Milwaukee was that Coach Mike Budenholzer ended up throwing in a switching defense in the second half, and it worked pretty well. The Bucks were +4 in the second half and did a nice job of defending the Jazz, as they were able to limit what was an onslaught of Jazz 3-pointers in the first half. At this point, it looks like Bud is going to be willing to make that adjustment quite a bit more often this season than he was last year. But the next step for him in his evolution as a coach, who's going to be more open-minded, is to go into games with the switching scheme being the primary option. When you're playing against a team such as the Jazz, that really has 4 players that are pretty similar in terms of their games, which the Jazz do have, as their starting lineup consists of 4 perimeter players who you can pretty much mix and match defensive matchups against, you should go into that type of game planning to switch at least 1 through 4. So that's the next step for Bud. He has to start games with the switching mentality instead of making that adjustment halfway through. However, it's certainly promising that he is willing to do that. In the end, the Bucks ran into an absolute juggernaut in the Utah Jazz. This has been the best team in the league so far. I've said it a couple times in this video, and there I just said it once more. They have been terrific, and I'm not really sure what the Bucks could have done all that differently in this game in order to give themselves a better shot at winning. There certainly were some easy looks that they missed, and then they were shots that the Bucks usually capitalize on. But they just were not the better team in this game, and Utah really ran away with this one. So kudos to the Jazz, and hopefully the Bucks can continue to gel and start to play better, especially once Jrue Holiday recovers from his current battle with COVID-19. I think that I've covered everything that I wanted to cover, so I will remind you to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comment section down below what your thoughts were on this game. That's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.